Simon Canine was born in Fairbanks and moved to Nome as a kid. He has lived around dogs most of his life, taking care of them and feeding them. My name is Bode, and I have been friends with Simon and his sons Gavin and Kellen as long as I can remember. I interviewed him on November 12th at my house on Newton. This podcast tells the story of Simon and his dog team before, during, and after the Iditarod. In the summer of 1993, Simon Canine decided he was going to run the biggest mushing race of all time, the Iditarod.
Well, I'd been running dogs for 6 or 7 years at that point, and just really enjoyed the time out on the trail with the dogs. I'd run several races around Nome, a lot of shorter races, 3, 7, even a 44-mile race, and enjoyed that, and was running the junior Iditarod at in high school before my senior year, and really enjoyed, again, getting outside of Nome and doing some of the longer races there. And eventually, just the time on the trail with the other competitors, and just seeing the new sights, and so decided to do the Iditarod after talking with my mom the summer before my senior year. She suggested, Simon, what do you think? You want to run the Iditarod this year? And I said, you know what? Sounds like a plan. Let's do it. And we just went from there. It was not really ever a long-term goal, although it was just always kind of in the back of my mind, something I'd like to do. So when the opportunity came along, we took it.
During the interview, Simon talked about his experience with dogs during his lifetime and how he trained his team before the race.
I think the first dog I ever got was my favorite lead dog, Lacey. I got her from some mushers who used to stay with us in Nome at the end of the Iditarod. We were always a host family for them. And Lacey was a small husky, a 37-pound female, a great lead dog.
As the interview progressed, Simon talked about his sponsors and how his mom helped him a lot before the race.
My main sponsor was my mom. She was great. She helped me through most of it. She was there for a lot of different aspects of the race for me. I had other sponsors as well, smaller sponsors. A teacher who gave me $1,000 to help out with the expenses, and a few sponsors out of Anchorage. But my mom was by far the largest sponsor I had.
Simon also talked about some of the hardships of the race, including a scary story that could have ended in death.
I was going down the Yukon River, and I don't remember which checkpoints I was between, but it was really cold. I think it was 50 or 60 below, something like that. It was freezing cold, and I decided to go seek some shelter in a cabin. The dogs were about ready for a rest. It was the middle of the night, and went over to a cabin to try to just take a little break and warm up. And I took that little break, but it wasn't really restful. And so I was leading the dogs back over to the trail. I had gotten off the trail a little bit and took a different route to get back over to the trail. And I was walking along in front of the dogs because they didn't know which way to go. And I fell in an ice crack in the river, and it wasn't super wide, but it was to the point where I had to stick my arms out in order to keep from falling down in that crack. And I got pretty scared about that, and it took me a little while to crawl out of it. And so I eventually did, and then I had to walk the dogs back around the way we originally came. But that was kind of scary to think that I could have fallen in there and not had a way to get out.
The part most memorable about the race, however, was seeing Nome over Cape Nome and knowing he was going to finish the Iditarod.
I think probably the most memorable was when I was coming over the top of Cape Nome it was really dark out. I finished in the middle of the night. When I came over the top of Cape Nome, I saw the lights of Nome and knew I was almost there, and it was pretty emotional, and just that probably sticks out the most in my mind, is seeing home after all that long of a trip.
I asked Simon whether he would like to run the race again, and his answer wasn't really surprising.
I think about it a lot, and all the work that it would take to get another dog team ready to run the race. Sometimes I think maybe I could run it with somebody else's second team, their puppy team, if that ever came up. But I don't have any plans to do it in the near term, but it's kind of a thought in the back of my mind that at some point I'd like to do it again.
I would like to thank Simon for letting me interview him and for making this podcast great.